What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of the Wealthy Legacy Journey. We're all three here today, which is awesome. This is going to kind of be hopefully like the dynamic moving forward. But today we are going to be talking about the power of just taking the next right step, because I feel like that's something that we're doing a lot in our business right now. And so I was going to right out of the gate, you've got Nathan here, we've got Tim here, just getting some examples out there of fruits that we've seen in taking the next right step in business. Nathan, you want to hit us first?
Oh, about taking the right man. You went right into it. Let's get.
Yeah, I did.
It's funny when you presented it to me. The first thing I thought about was a story that I've shared before on Facebook. I don't think we've talked about it yet, but it was about this guy, Kevin. But I bring it up because I just wanted to think about it. I reflect on it quite a bit, where we ended up I'll give a brief kind of background on this, but we called him as a training, and it was a for sale by owner, and that was how I made my bread and butter. And I remember calling him to train Mr. John. And I remember talking to this guy, and he's like, I don't like realtors. I don't like this, and I was like, well, just give me a shot. I was like, basically, I called him to tell him he priced his thing too low. And even if he didn't want to use a realtor, he needed to raise his price because he's hurting the market by lowering his value. But I also obviously wanted to get the listing. So the reality was, the way that I felt like doing the right thing was you do the right thing by offering help and bringing value, not by selfishly wanting what you want. So as long as you do the right thing, it ended up being to where he basically was like, I'm going to the dump right now, and that's how we call him Dump Guy till this day. But
I always wondered about that.
I'll call you back, and I was like, he ain't calling me back. That's typical get him off the phone type verbiage. Anyways, long story short, he actually did text me back and said, hey, I ended up selling that one, but I've got a couple more for you to look at. We ended up meeting, did a discount commission, didn't want to pay more than 4%. I could have easily said, well, that's tough. I don't want to do it. But I felt the right thing to do was, you know what? I'm still going to make something. I'm going to build this relationship. Bottom line is it opened all these doors. Like, he's the reason why I got into this Facebook group, because of his partner, Jeremy. He's the reason why I'm now able to do a lot of investing, because I saw what he was able to do. And all these things I go back and look at, and then he's lent money on a lot of our deals. He actually lent money on the deal that you and I did, So I think about all the doors and opportunities that have come from it. I even just got a text yesterday from a friend that was a mutual friend of his that I ended up meeting, and he was just like, hey, you got a foundation guy. Hadn't heard from this guy in 2 years. We had done some business together, but I just think about all those different people that we have met, all the things that have opened up, all the value that he's brought, all because of one call, and all because of just trying to do something right. And to me, trying to do something right is offer help and offer value without expecting anything in return. And if you get something in return, awesome. But you just have to be able to say, hey, the right thing to do is just to give. And, if we get something, great.
Man, there's so many good examples in that, though. I mean, just like next right step of even calling those for sale by owners. Because how many times do you get no's? But yet you keep calling, you keep calling, you keep calling. And eventually you stumble upon somebody who might have one listing. Then you got this, diamond in the rough, right, of this relationship. But then also, like in business, so many times the next right step is just building those relationships, because those relationships are what's going to take you to the next level. That's so powerful. What about you,
Tim? That you invited Tim and me and Kendell to sit at Dunkin' Donuts and look at us all here today.
That's true. That's true.
Later, is one
and all the deals that have gotten done, and and then through that connecting, I got to connect with Aaron and Carson and work with them, and it's very exciting stuff.
Yeah.
What about you, Tim? Any examples of?
I think for me, I think a lot of it, talking about taking the next step, thinking about how we've been building out this trading algorithm. And, I come from a different programming language. My background is more in business intelligence and some development in VB and Visual Basic. It's a different language than we're in Python now. And I remember getting into this and taking these steps forward. And I remember it seemed so daunting, so big, so overwhelming. And then I remember you and I sitting down and breaking it down into small chunks. So instead of it being like, this is too much, I literally started just taking one small piece at a time and started moving forward. And then when I met obstacles, like it wouldn't work this way, I would pivot, I would try something else, and I would find a better way or a different way that would work. So I didn't stop and say, and throw my hands up and just be done with it. We literally just found a different way, a better way of doing it. And we just kept moving forward, kept that ball moving forward, even in the face sometimes of adversity, right? And sometimes it seemed like, okay, we're just not seeing the light. And you keep pushing, you keep pushing, keep pushing. All of a sudden, huge breakthrough. Like things just start to rock. And we're looking at some of these numbers going, this is really working. But it took a lot of time and effort and perseverance to get to that point. So glad we kept pushing.
Yeah, and like even one really cool example in that is just how we're going to get funding right now. And when we originally set out, it was like, oh, we're gonna, when we go to launch, we're gonna put together 100,000. It'll be no problem. And originally the idea was like, well, instead of just getting 100,000 from one person, let's get 50,000 from two. And that didn't work out nearly as well as expected. There was a bigger shift than I thought I kind of intended. Or kind of assumed from real estate into stocks. And so that was a learning curve for me, which was great and a lot of growth there. So then it went from, okay, well, how much can we collect? And so we ended up getting, 10K from one investor, 10K from two investors, 15K from another investor. And so it puts us at 35. We've got a conversation with the guy this weekend. We've got two more people that are thinking about doing something. And so like now we have this little pool coming together. But at that, realized it might be more difficult than realized to put this money together long term. And something I learned from flips with hard money is even though it's really expensive, there's a lot of value to it because it can allow you that's their business model, is giving people money. And so it allows you quick access to cash to be able to do deals. So I started looking for something like that in the, investing space and the stock market trading space, I should say. We found prop firms. Ended up really liking this one prop firm, started looking at the technologies, and behind the scenes, they were trading with a brokerage called Tradeovate. Well, it turns out, and specifically on Tradeovate, where with most brokers, it costs us about $27,000 for a crude oil contract. It only costs us $2,000 with Tradeovate, which means that we're going to, yes, it's crazy. So like basically, we're going to be able to trade like, our dollar is going to go about 13 times farther with Tradeovate than it would go with any other broker. And that's going to open up big doors for us. But it was just because, well, I'm struggling on this path of my goal is to raise funds, right? But this avenue isn't working 100%, but I know I need to get to that $100,000 mark. Let me look into prop firm trading. Well, prop firm trading, there was a lot of difficulties because of mixing our technology with their technology, because we're doing an algorithm. We're not actually, physically trading ourselves. So we looked into their technology behind the scenes, and it was just through that phone calls, relationships, just like Nathan said, all of a sudden, boom, we found this brokerage that it's like that right there is going to open huge doors. And now it's like, okay, we're pretty close to 50 grand, but now that 50 grand is essentially worth what used to be like $600,000 because of the way that, we're able to increase our leverage, which we do have to be careful for, and we're not going to max out our leverage or anything like that. But still, like we're going to be able to do what we need to do with 50, where we thought we were going to be struggling just to make it happen at 100, which is going to be awesome. So that's really exciting. I can think about, just with Nathan and I, like one guy that works with us right now, Randy Cooper, he's amazing. He's been so great to work with. Gotten several deals locked up for us. Oh my gosh, right? Like I think Nathan and I probably talk like once a week, like, man, we love working with Randy. Like he has been amazing, but we found him because we just kept taking the next right step, right? It was, first we were doing mailers, and then we wanted to do the commission finance flipper. And then we did that event, and we changed the way we were going to, kind of do our initial launch. Randy ended up coming to that meeting, and it's just worked because we took like the right steps forward, and that's so powerful. So I want to get, y'all's opinion at the end. I want to talk about kind of the whole vision for everything that we're doing right now, the big impact. But before I get into that, I think we should break down. I'll get a pen and paper here. I want to break down like what are the steps, if somebody is trying to take the right next step in business, you know, whether that be actual steps, mental steps, what are the steps that you think, you know, people are needing to take that next right step?
Well, I can think, first of all, before you even get started, the first step you need to do is figure out the why and your passion, and make sure that
That's
you're
so
really
good.
passionate about this. It's something that you really want to do, not just because of money. It can't be just that, can't be just the driving force. It can't be the only thing you're doing it for. I think personally, I think it's failed for me trying to do those things just for money. But once I find a passion and I find an end goal and I find my why, man, I just light up. I can't wait to get up every day and do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again.
Man, that's so powerful. You're the another thing you said know your why and find the end goal. And it's like end goals right there. Like if it was like a 1A, 1B, like almost they kind of have to come together. You got to know where you're going, but you got to go know why you're doing it too. So knowing your why, knowing your end goal, super powerful. So Nathan, from what you've seen, you know, once you're in a position where you know your end goal and you know your why reason, how do you start taking those next right steps?
That's good. You know, it's funny. We're the way the heat is right now, I'm not put a sprinkler out, but I kind of enjoy it. But it also made me think of, you know, Jackie. She has a garden out back, and you know, she's been, you know, doing an amazing job getting that thing set up and whatnot. And but I noticed like every day you have to water it, and there were a couple of weeks where I had to go out and do it. And it's like every day you're doing the same routine, and I'm thinking, it may look like something's grown today, or maybe you know you look for those little differences, like oh, is something happening here? But I realized it didn't matter if anything was happening because the watering still had to be done. You know, it still needs sun, it needs nutrients, it needs all that stuff. And I think to myself, like, that's kind of what I would say is no matter what, if you take a step in that watering, if I didn't go out and water, the whole thing dies. Now I could have probably went out and looked, and knowing my like mentality, sometimes I'm like, oh, let me go look for some superfood that can help grow this faster, stronger, quicker. Well, I just said that, but you get the idea. And it's like, instead, it's still going to always need that one step. And so what I would say is, you know, once you figure out your why, once you figure out your goal, whatever that may be, you have to look and break down. So for instance, let's say you're going to try to grow some fruits and vegetables. Okay, well, it's going to need, you know, it's going to need dirt, it's going to need mulch, it's going to need the things that they put it in. They did so many steps to build this thing. It was amazing. Like, and it's like, then it's going to need water every day. It's going to need, you know, maybe once a week of plant food. It's going to need sun, and it's going to take time. And so I would say if you skip one of those steps, it's probably not going to work the full thing. So I think you need to take whatever it is you're trying to do. So, you know, if it's, let's say I want to go do a real estate deal. We'll use real estate. I want to get my first real estate deal as a realtor. We'll use that. Then as a realtor, you've got to go and find leads. Okay, what does that mean? Daily, I have to, maybe I need to promote myself on Facebook to say, hey, I'm a realtor now. I want to let the whole world know it in case anybody wants to buy, sell, or invest, right? And yeah, that could be annoying, and you could talk yourself out of it, but it may be a necessary step daily to let people know. Then the second step may be, okay, I need to go ahead and source for new leads. So I'm going to walk 20 doors in a neighborhood that I want to sell a house in. And every day I'm going to do that. So as you see, you're building upon these layers of saying, if I want to build this business as a whole and I want to achieve this goal, then I've got to do this, this, and this. And day one, you may get nothing. Day two, you may get nothing. Day three, you may get nothing. Day four, you may get nothing. Day five, you may get nothing. Day six, you may get nothing. And I reiterate this because you constantly have to water it and water it and water it and water it, because eventually when you take those steps, it's going to grow into something. So I'd say to take that first step is find out one of those steps and do it every single day with no expectation of it producing something right away. Just do the steps.
That's so good. That's so good. Well, and like what I wrote down when I was listening to is I thought, sum it up. You have to find a proven system, right? With the plants, it was the dirt, the seeds, the box, whatever. With the realtor, it's like looking at what other realtors have already done, find that proven system and be dedicated to the repetitive, maybe even boring process. day
Right. That's
in,
right.
day out, whatever you're holding yourself to, whether it's like, I'm going to do this once a month. Like for us, it's on the podcast, we're going to put a podcast out once a week. It happens every single week. And we know that if we keep watering that ground, if we keep planting those seeds, this will grow. And I think that's the power.
I'm going to add to that, and I love this because of the last few weeks, obviously, I haven't been on here, but you've continued to do it. And I say that to say that you believe, and not saying that like I don't believe in it. And it's good to talk about it here, but you believe in it. You believe in this is what it's going to be. It's going to bring value. And so that's the other thing, not expecting somebody else. Like you don't have to have somebody else to say, I need to do this. Like at the end of the day, you can still take your steps. And there may be times where it's like, well, I'm not going to have that other person there alongside me, but I can still take all those steps. And so I would say you're a great example of somebody that said, regardless of if I didn't have anybody this week or I didn't do something special, I still did my step. So
that's so good. Well, and it's funny that you say that actually, because whenever I was thinking, what would I say is step 4? I would say, and this is something that I honestly struggle with some days, is being confident in the work and your own worth and the value that you're bringing to the table. Some days I feel really confident in my worth. Some days I feel very confident in the value that I'm bringing to the table in Algorithmos, in NK Legacy Properties. But then there are other days where
somebody really special in you, man. Like, yeah, that's the thing. Like,
there's some times though that I struggle with that. But it's like, I think when we know that why, when we feel that calling, we have to go, you know what? I believe this is like, you have to find that thing. It's like, this is why I was put on earth. Like each of us were put on earth for a very specific reason. You've got to find that purpose, find that why, like, this is why I'm here. And then you have to just attack it with intensity, just consistency. Right. And so I would say step number 4 is really being confident in your worth and your value. And I even had that just the other day where I'm in this traders group. And somebody pinged a question, like it was like I don't know, late on a Friday night or something like that. And they asked, hey, does anybody know anything about algorithm trading? Does anybody do it? And I pinged over. I was like, hey, yeah. And I answered some questions, a little bit about, what we did, gave some clarification on some technology stuff. And then I just said, I put myself out there and it made me nervous. And I was like, if anybody ever has any questions about, algorithm stuff, feel free to hit me up. And I was nervous too, even though I've been building an algorithm for the last 2 years and like I've learned a heck of a lot of stuff. I was nervous to put myself out there because I thought, what if I don't know everything that I need to know? And I thought, you know what? It's going to just push me to a higher level because I'm going to be forced to learn something new, which is always good. And sure enough, somebody hit me up and he said, hey, can we jump on a phone call and talk about algorithms? I've been thinking about turning my strategy into an algorithm. I'll be honest with you guys. Like I said yes, but I dreaded that phone call because I felt unqualified. I felt like I didn't belong in that phone call. I felt like a poser. But I knew what I had learned, and I thought, you know what? Instead of trying to go in there, and this is something I've learned from Nathan. Like he is the best at this. Instead of going in there like I'm all that in a butter biscuit and I'm just the best thing ever since sliced bread, go in there humbly. And just say, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I have to offer. Here's what I know. Here's what I don't know. And I'm willing to grow. And I think it's one of the things I love about Nathan is that he's so honest and real and transparent about where he's at, what he can do, what he can't do. Even when we were putting together the commission finance flipper presentation, you like went through all the numbers and you were like, I want to make sure 100% that we never put that we've made, even if it's something we think we're going to make on a deal, like we've never put a number that we haven't actually done. And that was something that was so important to you. It's like never trying to be somebody that you're not. I've learned so much from that. Because I remember at a point thought, I have to pretend like I am at level 100 for people to respect me. And you've shown me that you can get a lot more respect out of just being honest with here's the skill set and the values that I can bring to the table. And I'm confident in that. And just like you said, helping people. And I just jumped on the phone with this guy and I was like, how can I help? That was literally my thought process. Not what can I get out of this phone call, but how can I help this guy? We're on the phone for 30 minutes. We may end up building an algorithm for this guy after the conversation. It was a really great conversation. But I started out with the mindset of how can I bring value, not how can I look like the coolest guy ever on planet Earth and, get all this value for myself. And, I just think that's That's powerful. So we have know your why, step one. Step 1B is know your end goal. And then from there, step number 3, I guess, find a proven system and be dedicated to the repetitive process. And number 4, be confident in your worth and your value. Now I think now would probably be an appropriate time though for whenever the fruit starts coming from taking those next right steps. How do you execute on that? And Nathan, I can't think of, I think out of the 3 of us, like you've done an amazing job at this, executing, on the fruits of those next right steps. How do you walk out that situation once the next right steps start proving out, what do you do? What's that final step?
Well, yeah, I wanted to break it up into 2 when you just said that initially. My mind went to, well, if you have a lot of fruit, you're growing the fruit. 1, the fruit tastes sweet. It's got a lot of hard work. You want to share that. So at the end of the day, the first thing is, I think, no matter what, when you get to a place, how can you share that somehow? Whether that be maybe you bring somebody in, maybe, and that's how it looks. So like if the fruit tastes good, maybe it's time to bring on another person. Or in my case, I think about, okay, when I was doing good at, like, from a traditional real estate experience, it's okay, maybe I bring on an agent to work some of these deals because that fruit was good. The fruit was there and it tasted good. So why not have somebody else share in on that? But I think that second piece is, once you do that, I always think about this. If you could plant some really, I guess I keep going back to this, even though I'm not a gardener, but if you could plant some really sweet strawberries and it's in a little 8x12 little section and you've done well at it, well, you might have a yard that, you could fit another 15 of those in your yard. Okay, so now just take that and move it over to that section of the yard and that section of the yard. So that way, now you're sharing this amount, but that may just be enough for your family, but you may want to go ahead and have another one that you could, share for another family. Maybe you're selling them, maybe you're, whatever it is that you're going to do with the fruit is up to that individual and what you're doing. But I think I always go back to, if you have something that works in that small box, well, it doesn't mean necessarily have to make your box bigger. Your box is already big. Our box was created. I mean, I say this, our box was created infinite. We have all the potential because we weren't contained in a box. And a lot of us, we all put everything in a box. We put God in a box. We put ourselves in a box. We put a lot of different things in a box. But the reality is if your yard's already big enough, just create more boxes. And so I would say, once you have the fruit, how can you expand? How can you expand? What does that look like? How can you take those steps? Maybe it involves somebody else coming in and helping put those steps together. And it's like now, like I'll give an example where with something we're doing on a different side of things, I'm having to bring in a sales manager. And I'm like, I never would have thought that I would have been trying to hire a sales manager. But the reality is it's those steps, because these processes are repetitive, but you only have so much bandwidth to create these processes. Now it's time to bring on somebody else that it's an opportunity for them, but they get to manage the processes. Processes aren't going to change. You've already seen that they're successful. You just need to bring people in. You need to expand. You need to make more of those processes and then have it manage, have somebody else water in that side and have somebody else water in this side. So
that's so good. That's so good. Well, and it's like you're doing 2 things by bringing in the sales manager. Number 1, you're sharing the fruit. Then you're giving somebody a great team to work around, giving somebody an awesome job opportunity. Like, that's sharing the fruit, but then it also is allowing you to expand and scale what you're doing. And that's so powerful. So once you take the right next steps, and you find that thing that starts to work, how do you scale it? That's so good. So with that, I want to break down, like, even with this podcast, like the whole point, I'll break down, like, for me, just my life, like for me, it's all about how do I impact the world? Like, that is honestly my vision. I know it sounds huge. I know that seems really, really big. And I know not everybody has those, they're not at that level of, kind of thinking as far as like, that's where you want to go. And that's totally okay. For me, I want to be able to impact the entire world. Like, I want, whenever my time on this earth is done, I want to know that I have left a big mark on the world. Not because I want my name to be known, but just I feel like that's what I'm supposed to be here for. And I got a couple different ways of doing that, but pouring into other people is the goal. And so, like, my end goal is to be able to make a big impact, I probably am going to need a big audience. And so that's why, like, one of my big passions right now is this podcast, the Wealthy Legacy Journey, is being able to start growing this audience. And so I went out and I looked at other influencers. What are other influencers out there doing? Well, they're sharing their message consistently. They're posting consistently. They're starting to gather a small following just by distributing free value out there to the world. So it's literally like I found this proven process. So that's exactly what I'm doing right now. This is me, kind of sometimes mundanely, repetitively every week, plus with some posts here and there, like watering my soil and watering that, proven system out. For me, though, when I jump on every week, I have to be confident in the value that I can bring. Now, when I have some high level individuals like Tim and like Nathan joining me that bring an absolute ton of value, it makes it way easier to feel like there's a lot of, value being brought. But that is, that's what I'm doing. And I know that once we start to see fruit in a certain direction, like we're going to just continue to grow that direction. We're going to continue blossoming that direction with the hope, with the drive, with the focus of how can we impact people? How can we help people? How can we help everyone to thrive? Right? That's just such a big, important piece. But it's super exciting. I love where these steps went. I kind of want to ask at this point, because we're almost out of time, for each of you guys, do you have like a personal, like one final note that you'd like to make on this topic? Or do you have any notes for like, how you've built wealth and or legacy this past week? You're going to build it this next week through taking the next right steps. So how would either a final note, or how do you plan on implementing this, or how have you been implementing this in the last week? Either of those would be great.
Well, I can say from my perspective, Kendall, and you kind of just hit on it, is kind of going back to the garden analogy, is you have different things that make up the soil and different chemicals you can help things grow, right? So it's like a team. You say myself, Nathan, we all come with different perspectives. We come with different talents, different skill sets. So I think the synergy that you create is amazing. And I think you need to make sure when you're building something that you're not bringing a mirror image of you, that you're building, you're bringing opposite people with different skill sets that will complement you. Not that you could be doing the same thing, but maybe that you have different strategies, different ideas. That's super important. People that are like-minded, but they're like I said, they're coming in with different perspectives. Number two is make sure you are tracking your changes. You're tracking your growth. Make sure you're always tracking your progress as you go forward. Keep track of it, and when you hit obstacles, make sure you're open-handed with it and enough to be able to pivot quickly and keep moving forward. And number three, real quickly, is just accountability partners. Make sure you have somebody outside of your business, a friend, somebody, a confidant, somebody that you trust, that will continue to encourage you and help you grow your business and be there as a sounding board, and that will continue to just motivate you and fill you. So that's super important to have that person outside of your business place,
especially if that person can be at the place that you want to go, that they can help guide and lead you there. That's really powerful. Absolutely. Too. If they can't, if they're at the same level as you, that's good. If they can take you where you want to go, that's amazing.
Absolutely.
What about you, Nathan? What do you think?
Well, that was great. Those are great steps. But the only thing I would say is, and it's something that be very, very cautious, and be very wise with who you allow in your circle with watering that yard, that box. And I say that because just give an example. There's a lot of people that, they might come in and they want to put a soaker hose. They might want to come in and they might want to like do all kinds of things that aren't in your way. But the biggest thing is do they fit your style? Do they fit your thing? And so, really quick, there's a guy that he calls me, and every single time I get the initial gut vibe of like, why does this guy keep trying to flatter me in a way? And because it might ruin my garden, you know what I mean? In that sense, it's like, okay, I might start believing that, so maybe I'll start doing this, and this, and it changes my thing. So be very cautious, be very wise, because if somebody really wants to be involved with you, they want to help you as well. And you'll tell when somebody wants to just kind of take. And that's, I just say that because it's a very important thing. I just say, be cautious and wise who you let in that circle, who you bring alongside you in those steps. So
Dang, that's really good. Yeah. You guys brought some awesome stuff to the table. I don't really have anything as impactful to say for final thought. I should have gone first, and then you all like escalated at the end. But I think I would just say, no matter where you're at, whether you feel super confident where you're at or you don't feel super confident, you just gotta know your value, even if that means writing down on a piece of paper what have you done and what can you do well, and just know that. And something that I'm working really hard on doing is being real and honest. If you don't know everything in the world, that's okay. You know what? That makes you like everybody else, right? And there's a good chance that a lot of the big people who want to pretend that they're big aren't really as big as they make it seem like they are. And so don't believe the hype. Just take the next right step. And one thing that kind of alludes to what Nathan was saying, though, is I heard the other day that Amazon, Amazon's like $1 trillion company at this point. Jeff Bezos owns 10% of it. And this guy was talking about CEOs and how they don't own 100% of their companies. And he was talking about how it's so powerful. Like he said, it's more powerful to own. He specifically said like 50% of 100 companies than to own 100% of one company. But even if you break that down, he said 10% of 100 companies versus 100% of one company. You own basically 1,000%, right? 10% times 100 companies of good, solid, profitable companies. You're diversified. So Nathan, something he said was share the fruit. You look at the Wealthy Legacy Journey, you see 3 awesome dudes sitting here that are trying to pour and trying to give. If I was doing this by myself, it'd be a lot harder. Having a good community, having a good team around you is super powerful. So whenever you're doing, I think we've talked about surrounding yourself with the right people. That was even Nathan's final note. It's so powerful. So find the right people, take the next right step. With that, it has been awesome hanging out with you guys. Thanks for stopping around for this week's episode of the Wealthy Legacy Journey. We will see you next time. And here is to you and your own personal Wealthy Legacy Journey. See you later.